The 65th book that I read in 2024 is Thinking in Pictures My Life with Autism by Temple Grandin. I realize that there is a lot of criticism of Temple Grandin, and this book certainly shows why. Although it was written a few years ago, she does use some terms that we wouldn't use today, and she doesn't edit those terms out, even though this is an update. For example, her opinion on ABA therapy is, I think, very controversial, especially with other autistics and other books that I've read, which do not promote ABA therapy at all. Temple Grandin does. Also, her use of the R word is copious throughout this book. I realize it was written years ago, but still, she has not updated that. Now, it didn't necessarily bother me as much because it was written a few years ago. It didn't bother me as much as I'm making it seem. And I did learn a lot about autism, but it was a very specific kind of autism because it's about her, the way she functions, and she thinks in pictures and instead of words. And so she had a really hard time in regular school until she was moved to another school that allowed her to flourish in the arts and in music and in ultimately building machines to make it more humanitarian in the way that cattle are destroyed for beef. And that would be another, I think, thing that makes this controversial is the work that she does with animals. She loves animals, and wants them to die humanely, but she creates machines to do that. She also argues in the book that animals would die much worse in the wild. For example, a cow would be tracked down and killed, and its death would be very slow, whereas in her machines, its death is humane and very fast. And that's not what I've read in other books about how frightened cattle can be, how frightened other animals can be before they are mutilated for our consumption. But it's a solid book. I'm glad that I read it. She's the most noted autism writer, probably the most noted autistic person that's still alive. So I'm glad that I read this book. I will probably read another Temple Grandin book because I'd like to get beyond her specific case of autism and see what she has to say about autism in general. So yeah, not highly recommended. There's many other autism books that I've read by Paige Lael and by Orion Kelly that I think are better than this and a little bit more general than this, while telling their own story as well. But it's a solid read. It took about 8 hours, and yeah, I recommend it, but it wouldn't be my first book about autism that I'd read.